He was rich, unimaginably rich. A man who owned more than he could count, who lived in a house that echoed with silence, and whose wealth only made him lonelier by the day, but that day. That day everything changed, Mr. Richard Halden was a retired tech entrepreneur, a self-made millionaire who had built an empire from scratch. At 62, he had everything: cars, properties, stocks, luxury, but not trust, especially not in people. He had been cheated once too many by friends, by investors, even by his own brother. So, when Maria came to work as a live-in maid in his sprawling mansion on the outskirts of town, Richard greeted her with a polite smile but a guarded heart. She was in her early 30s, soft-spoken, with tired eyes that had seen too much pain and lips that rarely smiled. She said little, worked silently, and never once asked for more than her due. But something about her made Richard uneasy. She was too honest, and that was suspicious. No one is that good. He told himself, over weeks, he watched her closely through the security cameras. She would clean the hall, prepare his meals, take leftovers to the garden birds, and once Richard saw her pressing a worn-out photograph to her chest as she stood silently in the pantry, eyes closed, whispering a prayer. He couldn't hear what she said, but her tears were real. Still, Richard's mind spun in doubt. What if she was waiting? Watching? Planning? He needed proof, so one evening Richard left the drawer to his private safe ajar. Inside were stacks of crisp dollar bills and a necklace worth over $30,000. He left it like that, obvious, tempting, an open invitation, and watched from his upstairs monitor, waiting for Maria to enter the study. She came in with the vacuum cleaner, paused. She noticed the drawer slightly open. Richard leaned closer to the monitor. Her hands froze. She stepped back, stared at the contents, then slowly walked toward the desk. Richard's heart raced. She reached out, but then she stopped. Her fingers hovered over the handle of the drawer. As she whispered something, Richard turned up the volume on the camera feed. I didn't come here to steal. Not after everything I lost. And just like that, she closed the drawer tightly, locked it, then left the room. Richard sat back, stunned. He expected anything but that. The next day, he called her into the study. Maria stood before him, nervous. He had never asked to speak with her directly. She kept her hands clasped tightly in front of her apron. Maria, he began, voice heavy. Do you know I left that drawer open yesterday? She looked down. Yes, sir. You saw what was inside? I did. Why didn't you take anything? She flinched, a flicker of pain crossing her face. Then she spoke quietly. Because my mother used to say, it's better to sleep hungry with dignity than eat in shame. I have a son, Mr. Halden. He thinks I work in an office. I told him I'm a manager because I didn't want him to feel embarrassed. He's the only good thing I've done in this life. I can't let him down. Richard felt a weight pressed down on his chest. You lied? To protect him? She nodded. I've cleaned homes my whole life. But I never stole, not even when we were starving. I came here to earn, not to lose myself. She turned to leave, but Richard stopped her. Maria, he said, his voice cracking. Please sit. She hesitated but obeyed. What followed was something neither of them expected. Richard told her his story, his betrayal, his loneliness, his fear of trusting people. How he couldn't believe in kindness anymore. How every act of honesty felt like a trick. And Maria listened. Then she said softly, kindness isn't extinct. Sir, it's just quieter now. It doesn't shout like greed does. But it's there, in people who still pray. In children who still hope. In mothers who still lie to protect their sons. Tears rolled down Richard's cheeks. The man who once ruled boardrooms now cried in front of his maid. But in that moment, she wasn't a maid. She was the only person who had made him feel human again. The next day, Richard called her into the study again. I've made arrangements, he said. There's a community scholarship fund in your name now. Your son's full education will be covered. And I'd like to ask if you'll manage something far more important than this house. Asterisk, she blinked. Sir? Asterisk, I want to start a foundation. For working women, for single mothers, for dignity, and I want you to run it. Maria stared at him, eyes wide. I'm not qualified, asterisk, you are, he said. More than anyone I've ever met. Asterisk, and just like that, the woman who had once prayed over a worn photograph became the director of something far bigger than herself. Asterisk. Years passed. Asterisk, the foundation grew. Maria's son became a teacher. Richard, no longer a prisoner of his own mansion, found peace not in stocks but in people. He visited shelters, gave talks on second chances, and spent most mornings tending to the garden Maria once watered quietly after lunch. Asterisk, and every evening, as the sun dipped low, the two of them, once strangers, sat on the porch, sipping tea, sharing stories, and reminding the world of one simple truth. Asterisk, it's not wealth, but trust that truly saves us. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that goodness still exists even in the most unexpected corners of life, please like this video and share it with someone who needs a little hope today.